Our next speaker is Hannah Wake, who's joining us from the University of East Anglia. Hannah is a higher education advisor, also mega busy at present, so I'm really grateful for Hannah's time today. And Hannah's going to deliver a session looking actually on results day itself and what to expect on the day, obviously with clearing in mind. So with that, Hannah, I'll pass the floor to you, please.
So my name's Hannah and I am a higher education advisor at the University of East Anglia, and hopefully it's going to be a nice introduction into what actually happens directly on results day, what to expect, and in several ways there'll be a few hints and tips hopefully you'll be able to gather as we go through the session, and especially it's in a timely manner, not too far away. We've got a couple of days until those all important results will be coming through and you'll find out what your next steps are. But ultimately some little pearls of how you can prepare just beforehand and really maximise the most of the fantastic processes and facilities that are out there, so you get the results that you want. So hopefully a lot of this information you will already know, but some of it is a refresher or will be some additional extra bits of information. So UCAS Track officially updates at 8 AM on the 13th of August. And through that, hopefully you'll be familiar with that image on the right-hand side of the screen. So log in through the usual information that you will be using. And you'll be able to basically see what the outcome is. So you'll be able to interpret the status that is on there. However, it won't actually show you what your achieved grades are. Therefore, it's imperative that you find out beforehand how are you actually going to receive your results from your centre, from the school or college, or if you're through an affiliated centre, how are you actually going to get to receive those results to find out the actual classification and the qualifications that you've got. So I've put underneath there email, is it a secure database or in person? Now hopefully this is information you already know, but also it's really important to find out at exactly what time can you get those results from. And part of that is because when you're contacting institutions, regardless of what the outcome or the status of your qualifications have been, if you're needing to speak to an institution, even though UCAS sends us as the institution, the body, we get to find out what grades you have. We need to hear them from you. So it really is important that you don't just see your UCAS track update and start to act from there. You really do need to make sure that you've received those results as well and that you have those to hand. Now, I know this looks like quite a busy piece of imagery on the screen, but even if you were to print screen this afterwards, or if you're going to look at this recording afterwards, I think it's quite a really succinct version of what the potential outcomes can be and then what the actions are afterwards. So I'm not going to spend the whole session dissecting this, but I also just think it's a really good tool for you to be able to see with some of the phrasing that you will actually see on results day. So I'm going to unpack a few of those, and you'll see here that these are three quite common outcomes, and they're in the different coloured pathways. So on the top line there, those three boxes are directly what you would see on your UCAS track. Now that first one, congratulations, your place at insert university name for insert course title has been confirmed. You've got your place, you've been accepted at that university or college. Great news, check the details carefully in Track and wait to hear from the university. So they will either get in touch with you by email usually, or they may get in touch with you by telephone if they have any more intricacies or pieces of information that they need from you. But they'll inform you of what all of their next steps may be. Obviously, you still need to find out what your grades are, but in that instance, congratulations, you've got your place. So another potential option, that could be either at your firm institution or at your insurance institution, and that would be reflective of what the university name is and as a result the course title. Now the other option, one of the alternative options, is you're in clearing, your clearing number is, and it will insert a number. You need to make sure that you jot that number down. It'll come in very handy later on, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. This basically means that you didn't meet the conditions of the offer. So you can now apply for a course available in clearing, and I'm going to unpack this central strip quite a lot in terms of what actually obviously happens if you're in clearing. So the third option is sometimes a little bit different because it means that you may then actually step into clearing, but it also may not. Basically, we'll let you know that one of the universities or colleges, so sometimes it's numerous, it may be both your firm and insurance that's showing up, and it says they've offered you an unconditional place with substantial changes to your original choice. So basically you've heard back from your choices, and at least one of these options, it could mean that there is a course change. So an example of this may be that you apply for a 3-year, let's say, pharmacy degree programme, and actually the change may be for a chemistry degree, it may be for pharmaceutical chemistry, it may be for pharmacology and drug discovery, or it may be a modification with an attached foundation year, subject to what you achieved in those grades. Now, what you need to do in this instance is check the details of the changed course offer in Track. Obviously, is it a course that you're actually interested in? And decide if you would like to accept this changed offer. So obviously, if you do not want to accept the changed offer, this may be the instance when you would then opt in and you would enter into the clearing process. Now, to unpack this a little bit, the option that was added to self-release into clearing was added last year. So 2019 was the first year that we saw this. And this is for people if you no longer wish to take up your unconditional offer and want to apply elsewhere. Now, this was introduced last year as an let's say an adaptation of historically, if you didn't want to study at your firm choice, you would automatically be able to get in touch with that institution to release yourself to be able to go into your insurance choice. Or alternatively, you would call your insurance choice if you placed at your insurance choice, and you would ask them to release you into clearing. Now, to speed up the process, essentially, because universities have so much to do, not just in the week leading up to, but especially on the day of results day, on the 13th of August, and days around that, it basically means that you can speed up that process yourself. You, the applicant, you can sign into Track, and you click the Decline My Place button. You will then be able to take to a page which explains all about what you're about to do, and basically this is to make sure you don't really make that much of an error. There are lots of, are you sure you would like to do this? Are you sure you would like to be declining this place? Just to clarify, that's definitely what you would like. A drop down question pops up and you must complete this before confirming. So there are lots of stages to clarify that's ultimately what you'd like to do. You then receive an email to confirm that you're in clearing, but also it says, please, they advise you to phone the university if you've accidentally made a mistake by declining. So this, in this instance, is, I guess, the next step into you actually going into clearing. So this is an adaptation by self-releasing into clearing that obviously wasn't on that previous slide. Now, talking about things that were introduced, we have a new function that's been introduced this year for 2020, Clearing Plus. Some of you may have heard of it already. A few people have got confused and thought it's completely separate to clearing. They're different processes, and I think it's fantastic that UCAS are adapting and they're trying to think about how can they make the process as easy as possible. So for applicants who are entering into clearing, so have not been placed or, let's say, are unhappy with their firm or insurance, the typical route that people would have historically chosen would be they would actively themselves explore the options that are available in clearing. So the 30,000 courses, and they would be able to explore that through the UCAS search tool. Now, Clearing Plus that's been introduced this year, it is an algorithm that has been set up, or UCAS have put in a lot of groundwork to look into what you initially expressed an interest in potentially up to those 5 courses when you first applied through UCAS. They then would also look at your actual achieved qualifications and grades. And ultimately, the hard work behind the scene is UCAS calculates some matches, so of what institutions have courses available that also will meet your profile as an applicant. So you'll be able to log into your Track and you'll be able to see view my matches, view your matches. And basically it will come up as an option where you are able to scroll through to have a look at those options of courses in relation to technically matching with your achieved grades and qualifications. And there is a function that you can click on that allows an institution, so that institution for that course, to directly get in touch with you. And what will happen is that information gets sent to the institution. So let's say, for example, myself, if I'm making the phone calls on the 13th of August, I will get a notification that will come through at my end, and it will say, this person's expressed an interest in you getting in touch with them for this course, and I will then be able to actively make a phone call. You've given me permission to be able to make a phone call to yourself. Now, both are fantastic options in terms of you exploring what is available and what is out there, but what is absolutely imperative that we stress here, the clearing phone lines typically will open around 8 a.m. So at the University of East Anglia, where I work, on Thursday, we will be opening our clearing call lines at 8 a.m, which means you can call us from 8 a.m. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, hopefully you found out what the status is on Track and you've hopefully already got your grades. And if not, you'll just have to wait until you give us a phone call. Now, ultimately, through Clearing Plus, I know for my institution this year and other institutions, because of when we'll start to receive the data of who we can phone call, we won't be making as an institution outbound calls until later on into the day. So we might not be starting until about 9:30. Now, we know that there are a limited number of available courses through clearing, and maybe some of those more competitive courses that you're interested in, they may get snapped up quite quickly. So one of the options would be have a little bit of a scroll through, see what those matches are. You can still press a button to say, I would like the institution to contact me, but it may be that they have so many calls to be making, they don't get in touch with you, and that course is then no longer available because somebody else has taken the space. So it really is important to maximise the clearing function of you actively getting in touch with institutions. So in terms of what actually happens, you found yourself, you're in clearing, you're exploring what courses are available through clearing. And I've briefly touched on it a little bit, but you need to look for which courses are available through the clearing vacancy search within UCAS's course search tool. Now, we would say this first and foremost because that is the function where they're kept up to date as quickly as possible, essentially. So that's the most live function. You can also use individual universities' clearing search functions on their websites, but maybe what they're asking for and the availability is not directly reflective, and it is imperative that you directly contact the university to discuss your options. So you'll find on the 13th, when you're looking at different institutions' websites through the direct web link for that university, you'll see they'll have their number plastered on the top. There'll be options for live chat. You can contact admissions as well, but the most imminent response method is either for a live chat function or for you to speak to them on the phone. But do be patient. Thousands of students, thousands of applicants, thousands of teachers, loads of people try to get in touch with us on the day. Just be a little bit patient in case you're in a line of waiting, essentially, which really does hone in on the idea of if you can use multiple devices and you can have multiple people trying to make a phone call to get through to different institutions to be on and waiting at different times, it's just most important that you as the applicant get to speak to us. You can speak to us first and say, I'm given permission to potentially a parent or a teacher or a member of staff at school. You can say that, but we need to speak to you first and foremost. But through the UCAS course search tool as well, there's the direct link on there where it'll have the university's clearing call lines as well. So just make sure you're exploring what courses are available, not just because you've once looked at a prospectus and you saw that they wanted a course, because the grade requirements are often rather different, and not all courses will be available through clearing. It's subject to what spaces are still available. So in terms of contacting universities, first and foremost, we've talked a little bit about being prepared, but make sure you prepare your documentation. Not just that you have potentially your A-levels, IB, Scottish Highers, BTEC qualification, CTEC, whatever qualification it may be, prepare that documentation so you have it directly in front of you as a point of reference. But also, with that respect in mind, also your GCSE grades, because some institutions will also need to check that you're meeting the conditions of that current clearing course, and it may be that they need to look for some GCSE equivalents. Not just in your English and maths, but maybe other courses as well. Have your clearing number, so that will be on track if it says you're in clearing, and also your UCAS personal ID to hand. So, for example, at the University of East Anglia, we don't ask for your clearing number, we ask for your UCAS personal ID. Some other institutions will only look for your clearing number. It depends on how the university operates, so please do make sure you've got both to hand. So whilst you've waited for so long, potentially in a waiting line, please do make sure you've got that to speed up the process for yourself. Top tip, to have your phone charged, not just so you can maximise making all those phone calls, but it may be the case that an institution's actually going to call you back. You want to make sure that you're ready to take that phone call as well. Making notes as you go through the conversation. They may say something quite useful that you hadn't thought about from that institution. You may have the opportunity to talk in a little bit more detail about the course. You may have the opportunity to ask about accommodation or social activities, and they may be some really crucial aspects of your decision-making process. Any useful bits of information affiliated with that institution, all part of that being prepared beforehand, but also to be prepared on the day as well. Then the next stage is hopefully exploring the option of verbal offers. So if you've made the phone call, you've got through to a representative, they're asking you for your grades, are there any spaces available on this course? If you meet the grade requirements for that clearing course, you can get as many verbal offers as possible. So if we start the timeline and let's say you've already got your grades, from your school or college at 8 a.m. You've already seen what the update is on track, you're in clearing, you can make as many phone calls as possible. And technically, if you meet those requirements, you can receive as many verbal offers as possible. Now, I've put a little asterisk here that says check how long they're valid for. Some may only be for a few hours, but typically they'll be for a 24-hour period or a little bit longer than that 24-hour period, which basically means from that time frame, within that time frame, you need to make sure that if you want to accept that offer, you need to do that within that time frame. Now, this is where it gets a little bit difficult because you obviously want to shop around, you want to look at what is available, but you need to make sure if you're going to make a decision on that verbal offer, you can only hold it for a certain period of time because there may be somebody else who wants that space. Then that important second deadline in the day is 3 p.m. So from 3 p.m. on this year, for 2020 entrants, the 13th of August, you can add clearing choices yourself to your UCAS track. So it's only from 3 p.m. You can go through, select the institution and the course. You can only add one choice at a time. Okay, so this is where it's important to accept as many verbal offers as possible, because then once you've made your decision from 3 p.m, you are able to do that. It may be that you have until 3 p.m. the next day. So it might be that you want to think about spending that time to really decide which institution is right for you. Now, we have briefly talked a little bit about adjustment in this session. And I want to just talk a little bit about some parallels with the clearing and adjustment process, as the principle of why you would enter the process is different, as it's really the same, the idea for you to reconsider where and what you'd like to study. But it's usually the idea of you've exceeded the conditions of your offer. So you've actually achieved better grades than you'd initially needed to meet for that course, that you've got the conditional firm that's changed into an unconditional firm, and you can potentially swap your place. So again, the process is different. You need to select for adjustment in track, contact university to see what's available, but the process that's a little bit different here is when you're speaking to as many universities as possible and inquiring about courses, have you got any spaces? These are my grades, could I potentially get a place? You can only accept one verbal offer for adjustment, because instead of you as the applicant adding the option of that institution and course into track for clearing, for adjustment, the university, the institution, puts it onto your UCAS track, and then you would select it. So you can only accept one verbal offer for the institution to action that onto your UCAS track to see. And as we did hear a little bit earlier, when the university adds that onto your track, you can still hold your original offer. So say, for example, you met the conditions of your firm university, but you exceeded those conditions, so you want to have a look around what else might be available. You can still hold that original offer with your firm university, and you can hold your offer for up to 5 24-hour periods from when your track initially updated in the morning. So let's say you got the results at 8 a.m. on the 13th of August, it would be 5 24-hour periods. So it would then be 5 days later at 8 a.m. that you would be able to still continue to hold that original offer and your adjustment offer. So making decisions, please don't just go for your first clearing offer. We very frequently talk about the concerns of anxiety and stress and panic and goodness me, I've not got the grades that I was hoping to be achieving. There's so much still available, and there's a process of really being prepared and exploring what is available to you. So just because you've got one verbal offer for your course that you might be interested in, or potentially even a different course, don't just go for that first one. When it comes to 3 p.m, do make sure you're still exploring. There's quite a nice grace period between that 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. before you can start to make that decision and accept your offer. Really dig into the course details. So once you're now looking into different courses, just like you did in the first instance, don't just think, oh, that's an English course, I was going to apply for English in the first instance, as we really do know that the modules as a part of that degree programme really can differ. And it's about what makes up the day-to-day. So looking at facilities, looking at resources, are there any areas of expertise? Can you ultimately imagine yourself studying and living there? In some instances, you might be looking at studying 3, 4, 5, or potentially even more years at one institution. You still want to get that same level of excitement and buzz. So please do make sure you're really looking into making the right decision, even through clearing. Maximise the clearing resources to inform yourself. So ultimately, what are universities offering where you can still find out information? Is it that they've got any clearing open days where obviously socially distanced, or potentially virtual open days for you to explore their offering? Thinking about that grace period of time that you have, you don't have to make an instant decision. Those verbal offers are made with a condition of you have until X amount of time where this is still valid, so use that time. Have you got the option to visit the university for a personalised campus tour? Obviously, again, following current government guidelines, see what's available and out there, not just exploring university websites, but have you got the option to chat to an academic or to chat to somebody from professional services, or to maybe speak to a current student who might be doing your course? There's lots of live chat functions that are going to be available. Please make sure, as we encourage from the first stage of you exploring your institution and your university journey, that you're still employing exactly the same techniques and processes so that when you make that decision, it's the right one and it's an educated one. What's it come down to your next steps? Maybe afterwards, you've made your decision, you've explored, hopefully followed those steps of really deciding what is the right institution and what's the right course for you under the current circumstances. You have the option to add that institution onto track. The university then follows all the important processes afterwards, and then they will be able to send you through all of the important paperwork for your next steps. So it might be in relation to the course, it might be more in relation to accommodation or any other bits that are relevant to the institution. So make sure you're filling all of that out in a timely manner, as again, there may be a few restrictions to ensure that you can get accommodation guaranteed, for example. They may ask you for some supporting documentation. So maybe you told them, for example, you wanted to study, let's say, maths, and they wanted to see your GCSE a little bit higher than the typical base grades that might be asked for most courses in the UK. So they might ask to see proof of that GCSE qualification. So they might ask for you to send that. Do obviously find out how you can send that to them in as quick of a manner as possible. And ultimately make sure your contact details are up to date. So there's the Your Details section of UCAS Track. You might have filled that out absolutely yonks ago, but it ultimately is important because those will be the contact details that if anything is going to start to be sent out to you. So it may be your welcome pack, it may be information about your start date, it might be about how can you still get involved in Welcome Week given the current situation, some reading lists to get ahead of the game, maybe your accommodation information, and you may only have, let's say, 2 working days to be able to accept that. You want to make sure that that information you've inputted in your details is correct so that the institution can get in touch with you if they actually need to. And I think ultimately it leads us to say, get excited for what the next few stages are going to be. University life is some of the best time of some people's lives, and no matter how you've got there or how results day may pan out for you, especially under the current circumstances, if you follow all of the right stages and the right processes, and you make sure that when you're making a decision, it isn't just on a whim, it's after exploring all of the information that is out there, and start to get excited. Join what social groups might be available for maybe the accommodation halls that you're moving into. Are there any social media pages about the course that you're actually going to be starting? We work with hundreds of thousands of schools and colleges, or academic advisors, all the way through to prospective students and current students as well. And having worked at a few different institutions, have come across loads of people who've entered through university, through the process, potentially clearing, potentially adjustment. And I don't think you look at a student and ever think they didn't really want to come here or they did really want to come here. It's about you making sure that however you've got there, you know every single stage has been researched, and ultimately you're excited to come and join whoever that institution might be and whatever course that may be. Thank you so much for joining and listening today.